Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Astro Imaging channel. Alex is off this week, so I'll be hosting. We'll have a little different introduction than Alex, so I'm not going to present to our schedule, but just like every week, anyone that would like to make a presentation, we have a form on the astroimagingchannel.org. You can send us a note and someone will contact you, and we're always looking for presenters. Probably it'll be maybe into September, October when they have some openings, but please make a submission if you'd like to present, if you have something interesting. And I think before we get going with Guy tonight in his presentation, we're going to have a little short bit from Patrick. And what Patrick is, I don't want to say what Patrick is doing, he's going to tell us, but all those little snippets and all those little hints of processing that we have posted, that's Patrick's bailiwick, and he's going to tell us a little bit about it now. Patrick.
Thanks, Eric. Hi, everyone. I'm Patrick Spencer. I'm a new participant here at the Astro Imaging channel, and as Eric mentioned, I've been working on the video clips that a number of you have probably seen popping up in your notifications and on the YouTube channel. And so I've been working with Molly on that, and of course, anyone who's been, is followed this channel for any period of time knows that there's tons of amazing information. We've had so many great presenters over the years, and there's so much information. The hope with the snippets or the clips really is to just pull out some of those things. Maybe it's an example of a post-processing technique, or whatever it might be, but just to pull those out in a little bit more digestible and easy to access format, so that folks will be able to not just see the full episodes, but maybe oh, I remember seeing that one episode where something was demonstrated, and this will hopefully make it a little bit easier to find, and hopefully that'll be appreciated by the members. And Molly and I have been going through and trying to compile things that would fit that format well, and we've come up with a number. We've certainly posted several, and there's more, certainly more planned. But by all means, anyone out there, if there's a particular segment that you recall, something that you felt was interesting and would be useful to have highlighted, and to have it maybe a little bit more at the fingertips, please reach out, send an email to the general contact information, so that we can get those going. So thanks, and I'll turn it back over to you, Eric.
Yes, actually, this is something that I'd really be interested in, because I know sometimes I've been here for a long time, and I recall that there was a show with something on it, and I have to dig through, even with all the descriptions, you have to dig through all of these and then try to find that part of the presentation that really shows you how to do things. And that's what Patrick and Molly are working on. I think that's really going to be interesting. And we're going to build a nice database of techniques that I think all of you can really use. So we're going to move on to our presenter tonight, Guy Yanez. He's going to be talking to us about imaging for free. I think it's really about software for free. So, I mean, all I can say as an introduction, I wish I would have known about this a couple of years ago, Guy.
To save some money, right?
Yeah, but so we'll turn it over to you. So please present.
All right, so I'll start presenting here. Okay, there goes my screen. I guess you guys can see my screen now. I'll move this away. All right. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. And again, give us, when you ask a question, give us a few seconds to unmute ourselves and answer.
All right. Okay, so, well, thank you very much, Eric, Tim, and everyone at the Astro Imaging channel. I'm pleased to be here It's a real honor to be here. Actually, I think this is the closest thing on the internet to an international astroimaging club, right? So I think it's what it is. It's not a YouTube channel. It's really a club. So Sunday after Sunday, we're watching these interesting topics, and it's very, very interesting. And there are talented people participating here. And we just heard these little short videos are just amazing. So thanks a lot for that too. Okay, so this is a little bit about me. So let me introduce myself just very briefly. I'm a professor of economics and finance. That's what I do most of the time. So I've been an amateur astronomer since the late 90s, really. So everyone here will say, I've been an amateur astronomer since I was a kid and I got my first telescope, which is the same thing for me. But, I really catch the bug in the late 90s. Back in those days, having a CCD camera was a very expensive thing. It was very techy and all that. So we were all just trying to find our way around in the sky. So I've been an observer for decades, quite literally. And I've been quite lucky because I've been living in Montreal in Canada, which is a place I love, and Chile. I love that place too. I'm in Chile currently. And so I know both hemispheres. So I think I won't go into a debate which is the best hemisphere. I mean, they're both equally amazing when you watch the sky. So they're very, very interesting things to see. So I have attempted pursuing analog astrophotography about 20 years ago. I don't even know where those pictures are. I probably just on a drawer somewhere. I wasn't quite successful. But then I started trying CCD imaging around 2006 when I got my SB camera, and things started to improve. I mean, the digital era was kind of a cutting edge thing. And during the pandemic, I stopped doing astrophotography for a long time because I'm also very interested in cycling. So it's not very compatible because in cycling means that you have to, sleep well and get up very early in the morning. And, astrophotography is pretty much the opposite. So then I was sitting around in my living room during the pandemic, and I said, okay, so I was looking at my telescope standing there in the living room. So maybe I should grab my telescope, go in the backyard, and start imaging again. So that's where the little miracle happened, after maybe 5 years without just plugging in my telescope. And then all of a sudden, boom, everything worked like it was yesterday, right? I know this is not something that was kind of unexpected, right? So, all right, so then I catch the bug again on the astrophotography thing, and then all of a sudden I came back to over the internet. So there's the astroimaging channel. Been following the channel for a while. So there you go. So my imaging rig, very briefly, as you can see on the left, that's my grab and go. Just pick my camera with the tracker, and if you want to go astroimaging for free, there's no such thing. I think there's a caveat here, so I got to say, okay, so astroimaging for free, you'll see what I mean by that. It's almost free. So there you go. It's a grab and go. That's very cheap, right? So you don't have to break the bank to get a setup like that. Then in the middle, yep, that's my telescope, the one you see right next to the grass. And as you can see, I have a mini PC on my telescope, which is what I use most of the time. That's my setup, in the backyard. And my camera is the S-Big I was talking about. It's a very old camera. Works fine, the ST8300, filter wheel, well, everything you see right there. So, and that is going to be something I'll point out later during the presentation, because when you go for free software, sometimes you'll have issues if your drivers are 32 bits, for instance, they're very old. So if you have those issues, maybe you'll have to, you don't have a choice, you'll have to pick a software that you'll have to pay for. So I also do some solar imaging. So that's my very nice one telescope right there, 60 millimeters. And then on the right, as you can see, there's another grab and go setup with the Red Cat 51. And there's a little small refractor on the bottom, which is the one I use usually just to put an eyepiece, go on the backyard and start looking at the sky. Of course, I have binoculars, as most people do. So this was with David Levy and friends. He invited, I don't know, maybe 40 people that attended this amazing camp. So I had those days, were just wonderful. So I attended start parties in North America, especially in Canada and upper state New York. And that was the CAFTA in Quebec. There's a very, very enthusiastic community. So I know that there may be people from Montreal or Quebec watching the show. So congrats. I mean, those are the most enthusiastic people in the world. It's very hard to get, clear skies. I mean, that will happen, I don't know, twice a year. But if you attend a start party, you set up everything, even, if it's expected to be cloudy. So big applause for that. That was my LX200. I love that scope. I never got to get good images with it. I know that fork mount is kind of something you need to learn very well to make it, to get it to work properly. So, but I love the scope anyways, it's great memories from that scope. And this is me, astronomy camps in Chile. As you can see now, things are getting drier. This is pretty much central and northern Chile. It's pretty dry, as you can see on the background. And that was, at the bottom, that was our camp for the solar eclipse in 2019. So I've attended many, many camps, and there are amateur observatories all over the place, especially if you move from central, say, Santiago to the north of Chile. So when near full moon, it's cloudy outside, I'm cycling, but I know it's not compatible with astroimaging. That was me back in 2001. I was with, those students are from the business school, but I got them into astronomy. So, right, that was back in 2001. And that astronomy club at the Diego Portales University, where I currently work, I was working at that university back in those days, and moved back to Canada and back to Chile, I think twice. And but the club still exists, which is, it's fantastic to know. That the other day I was asking if they're having the regular meetings and all that. But it's at the Faculty of Engineering, which I think it's a better place to put the astronomy club. All right, so the brief motivation is that, okay, so we want to do some imaging. We know things can get pretty expensive. So you're on a budget, as most people is, and is it even possible to start from planning your astroimaging session to get your images and then upload your images on the internet and do that for free? That's what it is. That's what it's all about. So spoiler alert here is that, yes, you can. Okay, so maybe that's why you should continue attending this meeting, because I think it's really possible. Okay, so I actually do it, and that's why I wanted to share that experience with you guys. I don't spend money in software. I do have some subscriptions. I have paid for software in the past, but since the pandemic, or maybe, I don't know, a year and a half ago, I'd say, I decided to, what if I try to go 100% free? Don't spend a dime. Now, that said, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't go the other route, which means spend your money, get pretty decent software, high performing, I don't know, maybe PixInsight, for instance. I've been watching those clips on the astroimaging channel. So I think PixInsight is great. And I've heard of PixInsight back, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago when it was just starting. Nobody was using PixInsight, but it was an amazing way of processing images, very complex type of software. So I'm not saying here you shouldn't buy software. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, if you're on a budget, if you don't want to spend money on software, you don't have to. You really don't. And I'm going to show you some of my gallery on Telescopius, which is, by the way, free. So I have my account there. And now, if you say, well, look at those stars a bit bloated, you know, those images aren't perfect. That's not because the software is free. That's me. I mean, that's what I do, and I do my best, and I think they're pretty decent images. But again, that has nothing to do with the fact if it's free or you have to pay for your software. I think if you're talented, if you work hard, I think you can do very, very good, decent images going absolutely free, and that's what we're talking about here. So we'll go through that route. I'll show you what software I use. So we're going on a Windows base here. This is important. I'll more on that in a second. So if anyone around here was looking for some advice on what if I don't want to spend money, not even on my imaging rig, right? So because a little refractor fit the red cat, that can get pretty expensive. The camera, a good tripod and all that. So you're going to spend a lot of money. So one thing I'd like to mention is that at least you can, save some money from your software. So don't spend money there and put that money on your imaging rig. But in case anyone around here, I know there are many folks watching the show, a couple of alternatives. I won't go into the detail here, but how about getting yourself enrolled in a local astronomy club? I think that's the best you can do. Astronomy clubs, I've been, in the board of an astronomy club here in Santiago quite a long time ago, and we were complaining all the time. We had our facility, we had the observatory, and people just weren't using the cameras, the telescopes that were available, and we were wondering why. Those things are available, they're there, people don't use it. So your local astronomy club, if you can join them, they'd be happy if you can imaging equipment that may be available for you. So how about if you start a local club? If there's no club in your area, there may be some fundraising possibilities, looking for funds from the local government. I don't know, at least that's my experience. It should work if you seek for it. Now, you can also check if there are some observatories online that may give you some complimentary access to your facilities. So that would be my piece of advice if you want free imaging rig, right? And go absolutely free. I mean, you don't spend a dime at all. Now, if you have your imaging rig and you say, okay, so now I want to listen to this. I want to know if you don't have to spend money on software. So what are my alternatives? So there's the Linux system. Many of you are using Linux. I know Apple, of course, it's not very popular in astroimaging because there are limited applications. There are not many programs that work under the, at least to my knowledge, under the Apple community or type of computers. So that's the Mealy Quieter 2 you see there in the middle. That's actually the mini PC I use on my main telescope. I mean, that thing is great. It's very, very small. That computer is like a smartphone, quite literally. I mean, it's very portable, doesn't weigh anything, so you can balance pretty easily. Just put that thing on your telescope. You got 4 USB 3 ports, Windows 11, and you put everything, and it usually works. So I'm going to focus on Windows, okay, just in case. And I think there may be another presentation later, which is not my experience. That's why I can't talk much about Linux, but I think you can go free.
Folks, I think Guy must be having an
Yeah.
issue with his connection. Let's give it a moment and see if he comes back to us.
Hi, you're back with us, Guillermo.
Yeah. Okay.
Can
So
you?
I'm sorry for that. So I had to switch my internet connection.
Okay.
So
That's all right.
I
I'm glad
think
you came back in.
Yeah.
It looks good. Your video looks good. You sound good.
it's not supposed to happen quite that often, but you know how Murphy's Law is.
That's right.
So here I'm
Yes.
back.
Whatever can go wrong will go wrong, and at the worst possible time.
That's right.
All
That's
right.
pretty
We'll
much
mute
how
ourselves and turn off our
astroaiming
cameras.
works, right?
Yes. All right. Sorry, everyone, for the interruption. I think we're back.
And Guy, do you have your presentation available? There you
Okay.
go. I think the last thing that we saw was you talking about using Windows and not using Linux or Mac OS, and so that's I think where the break happened. So maybe back a slide or two. Back one
Okay,
more.
but I think I can skip a
You're
couple
good.
of things that may not be that important. So
Perfect.
I
Thank you,
think
sir.
that's right. So so as an economist, that's what I was saying. I think when we had this blackout, uh, how can free software really exist? I mean, free software, things for free are not something that we as economists are expecting all the time. So I'll skip, there are many explanations, but I'll go to the bottom where there's in yellow. So think about an individual that simply wants to share her or his useful work for free. I mean, just want to get, a credit for it. It's my contribution, and that's it. So that's a very good explanation. I mean, there are many people, especially in these kind of communities in astroimaging, that might want to do that. I'm thinking about Patrick Chevalier, for instance, from Switzerland. Uh, this guy, he created Cap du Ciel. I'm going to show you that software in a moment. And he was, he has been amazing, providing software for free for years. But how about a collaborative effort? I think that's a key to success. That's the most usual way to get very high performance free software that will, in some cases, even outperform a paid subscription to some kind of software. Okay, so I think Nina is on that route, for instance. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about today. I mean, Nina is key in this presentation. Now, I won't go into the economics here of things, but think about goods that are excludable. What's that supposed to mean? I mean, can I charge you for using my software, for instance? Yes, you may. So think about a good that is not excludable. Look up in the sky and watch the stars. And so why are you looking up? I'm just watching the stars, so you have to pay for that. There's no way, I'm stretching my neck, that's why I'm looking at the sky. So, I mean, that's ridiculous. You just can't. So there you go. Watching the sky is non-excludable, but software is excludable, but it's non-rival. Rival goods is that, imagine your imaging rig. You lend your telescope to someone. Can I borrow your imaging rig tonight? Yeah, sure, go ahead. And then all of a sudden, oh, wait, I want to use it. It's new moon, for instance. It's clear outside. I want to use it. Oh, you can. You just lend it to someone else. So non-rival goods, and that's key in software, is something that other people can use and have a copy just as good as yours. And besides that, think about software where many people are using your software, or the same software you're using. That means more brains, more eyes are using the software. If things go wrong, more people are going to try to fix the things and warn others and put YouTube videos online. So that's pretty much the software industry. It's what in economics we call a club good. So it works fine. I mean, there are good theoretical and empirical reasons, trust me on that free software could outperform, or at least perform just as well as paid software. It can happen. Now, We're going from planning. I'm putting there on my slides, you see there in blue, the different software we're going to be talking about. So if you want to plan your session and seek for your best location, okay, that's the first thing you want to check. Then check the weather. Then start with your acquisition. You need to plate solve. I mean, we're all, we understand plate solving today is just fantastic, right? So we'll talk about that in a moment. Pre-processing, processing, post-processing, and finally, you want your image to be public, right? To be published. But first of all, you're going to need something like this. This is VNC server. Now, VNC is what works for me. There are others, such as TeamViewer, AnyDesk. Think about something for free, such as this one. I think there's a limit on the number of computers you can put under one account. But if it's just your mini PC outside in the backyard and you have your main PC inside, where you're warm, you know, you can have some coffee and all that, should work fine for you. Now, if you go and download VNC, you're going to need the server on the computer that is going to be controlling your telescope. And you need the viewer that's inside your house. And that's how you connect to the computer outside. For me, VNC works fine, but you can. I know many people are using TeamViewer, for instance. Should be free. Correct me if I'm wrong. So let's go with planning your session. Are you still following me?
Yes, we're here.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if you want to plan your session, first thing, lightpollutionmap.info. That's online. That's a website. And by the way, when we're talking about planning, and I know that we had an interesting presentation a couple of weeks ago about planning, right? And you should do that way ahead of time. So you never go to a dark site, border one skies, and then say, okay, so what am I going to do now? No, you don't do that. You plan in advance. You do that at home. So where you have an internet connection, because many times if you're looking for border one, border two skies, chances are you won't have any connection at all, right? Even here, I'm in the middle of the city and my connection is pretty poor. So there you go, lightpollutionmap.info. So that's your spot there. That's border one sky, by the way, and look if there's, you know, I don't know, camping or something you can stay, and chances are, especially in northern Chile, you'll find a good spot. So telescopius.com. I gotta be honest with all of you guys. You know, I was so happy I discovered Telescopius. I heard about. I browsed and I saw, okay, this looks good. And then I saw the presentation of the owner of telescopius.com on the Astro Imaging channel, and I said, 5 minutes later, I was, creating my account and start using Telescopius. Telescopius is very similar to AstroBin, but it's somehow different. Now, if you look at Telescopius, that's the main screen you're going to find. Of course, you have your account. It knows where you are, so it'll tell you if if it's cloudy outside or it's not, if there's full moon, if not. It will, pick some objects that you want to image, and it will tell you, I would suggest that galaxy, this nebula here and there. Now, AstroBin is more about, uploading your images, and has all this social thing behind, which means that you post an image, a whole bunch of people are going to put likes on it, hopefully, and the comments, and then there's this ranking, right? So you know who's the best imager. There's an image of the day and all that. I think Telescopius just doesn't have that. I don't know why, but if you look at my account, I think I have 3 followers. I don't know if that's, but anyways, it's not what at least I use Telescopius for. Telescopius is an extremely powerful tool for you guys. It's absolutely free, so you can become a patron if you want, which might be a good idea. But if you're on a budget, I mean, it's totally free. It's no catch. It's no, it's free, 100%. So you get your account, you get some tips, you can plan your session, and after the whole process, when you want to upload your image, you go back to Telescopius, upload your image. You can upload a TIFF image. This is very important. There's a limit in the size of the image, but I think it's around 75, 80 megabytes, something around there. So, I mean, it's very, very interesting. So once you post your image, you'll get some JPEGs and you get your TIFF original image. You can post a new one, say, okay, this is version 2. This is the last version. There's plate solving. So you can, Astrobane also has plate solving. So if you don't want to spend money, don't want to spend money on Astrobane, I mean, you might want to, which is fine. I mean, Astrobane is great, but it's just, I don't know, it's $45 per year, for instance, just to get, the real subscription, which means you can post many, many images. But I'm not sure if you can post TIFF images, for instance, or you're limited to JPEGs. So you got to watch that. And consider that Telescopius, again, is different, right? It's a different product, and you may have both. But Telescopius, it's for planning and then your gallery. So this is, for instance, my gallery on Telescopius. There you go, 3 followers. Anyways, so that's my gallery. You can browse. I think I have 79 images. And it's great, works fine. So astronomy tools, astronomy.tools, we're planning. So these are the small calculators. Am I oversampling, undersampling? That's where you want to go to astronomy tools and check if you're, you want to grab a galaxy, you want to go long focal length, you want that large nebula, you probably want to go the other way around. So, and besides that, you also have the forecast. And the forecast is great. It's a Finger Lakes instrument that provides that app absolutely free. So you can check how's the weather outside. Go to stargaze.com. That's the one I use quite frequently because it's easy to use. You just look at the last column here and says, is it good to stargaze? Okay, if the answer is no, right? So maybe it's perfect time for today, right? We're attending this meeting, so it works fine. Besides, we're near full moon. And you can also use these apps on your smartphone, right? So there's a version for the smartphone, which is also fine. And if it's, it's not good to stargaze, how about reading? There's this magazine here. Have a look at it. Do you find it useful? I have a subscription, which means that you pay, I don't know, something like $10, and you get all the back issues and the, I don't know, unlimited number of issues in the future. It's very cheap. But if you don't want to pay, you can just have a look at the magazine online. And there are good tips, there are good articles, there are links to some YouTubers that may provide some interesting techniques. And there you go. Okay, so if you want to read a magazine for free, there's Amateurs of Photography, and maybe you want to have a look at it. Now, next thing is you need to target or spot your target on your planetarium software. I know that many of you guys are looking on the left of my screen, and that's Stellarium. Stellarium is fantastic, but for some reason, I'm not comfortable with Stellarium. So I use Cap du Ciel. Cap du Ciel is the software you see on the right-hand side of my screen. It's more versatile. It's my pick because, I don't know, you have the calendar. It's easier. I don't know. I plug my telescope. It works first time, every time. I mean, I've never had an issue with my telescope in Cap du Ciel. So I can spot the objects I want to image. I know where my telescope is pointing when I see my chart on Cap du Ciel. So it works fantastic. Now here's Nina. Nina is absolutely free. This is open source. No one will ever charge you for this because it's open source. So it's a pretty basic concept, and it works great. Besides, Nina has many, native functionality, but you can also download plugins and provide some extra functionality just in accordance to what you need. A lot of people are putting a lot of sweat, a lot of tears on this software, and I mean, it's amazing. It works great. The layout, the graphical user interface is probably not very fancy and all that, but I think that's a good thing, because if you're out in the field and your mini PC is not that powerful, you don't want to spend your system resources just on the graphics. So I think it's well constructed in a certain sense. So the sky atlas here is what you are actually seeing. So you pick an object, you put it here, and then says, okay, so this object will be transit, which means the highest altitude for tonight, 72 degrees. That'll be before midnight. Okay, works fine for you. So then you go and set for framing assistant. So framing assistant, this is one thing you're going to love, because this is a framing assistant. Now, if you put your data here, in case it's not already loaded, so that's my portable setup, for instance. That's the RedCat 51 and the 533, the ZWO 533 MC Pro camera. And there you go. It's a square sensor, by the way. So you say, okay, so I like that framing. Okay, so I can't grab M17 and M16 on the same frame. Okay, that's interesting. And then all of a sudden, you're going to say, so what about that other object there that looks like, I don't know, some what is this, the Yeti? I don't know. So you can frame that object, and you'll see how the coordinates are going to change. And once you're done, once you're happy, you say, okay, so that's the framing I want. You go to add target to sequence. So once you add the target to sequence, you just have to change the name of the object to the new object you just picked, and you're good to go. Now, you finish your planning session. Now you're out on the field. If you're like me, it's your backyard, you have to grab everything in the backyard, set up, which means polar alignment. And chances are, at least for me, there's your neighbor's roof, a big tree, a tall tree, I don't know, some obstruction so you don't see the pole. If you're using Nina, that doesn't matter. There's a polar alignment routine in Nina. You need the plugin for that. Okay, it's not native, but you just download the plugin and it works great. So you don't have to point at the pole. Now, that said, if you're way off, and when I say way off, imagine you're 1-2 degrees off the pole. So what you want to do is use the polar alignment routine, at least that works for me, and it will tell you, okay, so now it will look something like that. So it'll say, okay, go in altitude. So you manually adjust your altitude knobs and your azimuth knobs. And once you get the object inside this little circle here, you're good to go. But if you're way off the pole at the beginning of the process, what I usually do is that I go through the process. Now chances are I'm pretty close. So I start all over and again, pick an object. What the telescope will do is that it'll move. In this case, I have it at 10 degrees increments or decrements. So your scope is pointing somewhere on the sky, not necessarily the pole, and then it will go down 10 degrees, image again, 10 degrees, image again, and you start the routine again. And now it's going to say, I don't know, you're at off 2 minutes, something like that. 2 arc minutes is just fine. So then you fine tune. It works very, very good. When you use your guiding, you're going to see that there's no drift in declination, which means that you're pretty much polar aligned, and it works. So once you're done, and maybe I should have mentioned you should do that when planning too. Okay, you don't want to do that on the field. So you use a sequencer. I use a simple sequencer and not the advanced sequencer. It's not called a sequencer. The advanced sequencer is fantastic because you have control of everything, but you need to go in sequence step by step and understand what's going on. So if you're in a hurry, if you're lazy like me, and you go with a simple sequencer, it looks pretty much like Sequence Generator Pro if you look at the screen here. So you add your lights, your dark, your flat, exposure time. I want certain number of frames, and so on. So it's great. And in case you fill the information here and you want to go to the advanced sequencer, you can do that by pressing this button here, and it will, send everything, all this information to the advanced sequencer, and then you can move on and continue editing how do you want your session to work. Okay, then you're good to image and you can start, and that's it, you're imaging. Now, there are alternatives to Nina, such as CCD Ciel. So again, this is the same guy who created Cap du Ciel. It looks pretty straightforward. I haven't used it a lot, so I've been kind of just playing around. It's very intuitive. It's it's simple, straightforward. So if you want to have a look at CCD Ciel, go ahead. I mean, it looks promising, and it's free, absolutely free. Okay. Now Nina is just fantastic. So it's hard to beat, right? So, but there you go. I didn't mention it right now, but there's another free app that is fantastic. That is, if you want to go guiding, you want to go with PhD2. PhD2 is another very interesting application because now it's, and we've heard a lot of PhD2 here on the Astro Imaging channel. It's open source. It used to be a one guy effort. And this guy said, well, there's a code, take it as a community and move on. That's PhD2. And now it's great, multi-star guiding and all that has been really incredible, right? So guiding is something that Nina will integrate with PhD2, no problem. So, and PhD2, absolutely free, just as Nina. Now you need to calibrate. You got your images, you got your subframes, you got your darks, your flats, bias. So there's Deep Sky Stacker. Deep Sky Stacker is fantastic. It's good. It's very intuitive because all you need to do is grab your folder, grab the images, you drop them here, and it says, what is this? Lights? Yes, lights. All right. So then you grab your darks on another, folder, grab your darks, put them here. What are these darks? And you're good to go. And then you process, and what this does is will, stack the images, and that's what I would call pre-processing, right? But I don't really use Deep Sky Stacker anymore. I used to be a big fan of Deep Sky Stacker because I discovered Cyril. Cyril is the app on the right-hand side, on the right screen. And on the left, you have Cyril Image Converter. The Image Converter is a Python-based app. As you can see, it's a graphical user interface, very easy to use, where you just throw in your images, bias, dark flats if you have, and then it will move all those files to a new folder that Cyril will use, because Cyril is pretty much like Maxim DL. You need to put your images on a specific folder, not, so if you're lazy, you don't want to go and use the structure that Cyril is asking for. So Cyril Image Converter will create those folders and move the images automatically. And then there's a second button in Cyril IC which is go ahead and run the script. It will run the script on Cyril, and all of a sudden, boom, you got your images, you're good to go. And now, if you allow me, I just skipped the presentation. I don't know if you're still seeing my screen, right?
Yes, we're all set.
Okay, this is Cyril IC. As you can see, one good thing about this is that you can then save your files around here. So once you save the file with all that information and you want to continue imaging, I don't know, next week, and you want to use the same darks, the same flat. I won't go into the detail here, but I sometimes use the same flat. I don't know if you guys do that. If I don't move my camera, I don't think there are differences of no dust and things on my camera lens or anything. I mean, you can reuse your flat frames. Same with the bias, and you just change the images, right? So you don't have to go through the whole process, because sometimes you have some flats on one folder than another. So Cyril will take care of everything. So once you're done with the Cyril IC, this is where Cyril comes in, and this is where you start your processing. This is not PixInsight, I know, because PixInsight, by the way, is one app where you have control of everything. In this case, you don't have absolute control, but there are very, very interesting things you can do. So you want to start by, for instance, RGB compositing. So you pick your images, you throw them here, you close that, and there's your composed image. You can get to some channel, for instance, and say, okay, so I'll just grab this area here, I'll crop, and then if you go back here, colors are just awful. So you want to pick color calibration, photometric color calibration, pick an object pretty much that is in the area. So you know how it works when you try to plate solve, and there you go. Now, again, Murphy's Law, this usually works first time, but not always. So I'm pretty confident. There you go. Plate solving failed, right? Sometimes that's what happens. So you have to start again, I don't know, and then at some point it will work. Your image will look, the way it should be. So you got to be a bit patient. But once you get your image, so I'm going back to PowerPoint here. So once you get your image, it's plate solved. It's matching the color of the stars, and then you get a new color balance that will be more natural, such as this one. And then you can just ask Cyril to show you the objects in the image. It will tell, okay, so the east is up, north is to the right. So that's interesting information. Okay, so you just process your image, and now you want to post-process, or stretch the image a bit more. There's a lot of things you can do in Cyril. My intention is just to show you and walk you through the entire process. It's not about going deep into one app or another. So Cyril is very powerful. So you can use it. I'm sure you'll like it. Now, you got some nebulas. You want to try StarNet. StarNet, a lot of people think that it's just available on PixInsight, but actually StarNet is a totally different thing. So it's compatible with PixInsight, but also you can use it as a standalone, just as in this image, or if you have your folder, you have this other StarNet. I don't know if you can see my mouse here. So you grab your image, you drag it where the StarNet++ is, and the magic will happen a moment later. So you got the image on the left, and you say, wow, what are those stars? All that O3 is creating. I even think that that image is slightly out of focus, right? But anyways, you drag it to StarNet, and then you get the image on the right. The image on the right, starless image, it's created automatically right there. It's starless. So you pick those two images, and then you want to go to GIMP. GIMP works pretty much like Photoshop. For me, GIMP was a before and after. version 292, that was back in 2015, because GIMP used to be totally free, still free. It's just as powerful as Photoshop, okay? I mean, I may be wrong, some small things, but it only worked in 8-bit. And you know, if you're doing astro imaging, your images are, I don't know, 12, 14, 16-bit images. And then in 2015, late 2015, GIMP allowed you to process images in 16 to 32-bit. And there you go. So now it's suitable for astrophotography. There are some plugins that might work in Photoshop that don't work with GIMP. That may be a reason why you still want to have a subscription to Photoshop. That's fine. But for me, GIMP does everything I need to do when I want to post-process an image. So for instance, that's the same image we were seeing a moment ago. Okay, so I played solve everything. So there you go. The Gabriela Mistral Nebula, still kind of purple on the background and all that. So you can, you know, do all those fixes here on GIMP. Okay, so think it's Photoshop, right? It's Photoshop, but this is a free, totally free version of it. And you can also create some plugins and use it. The only issue I see is that I haven't seen many astro imagers using GIMP, which means that there aren't so many plugins for astronomy processing. There aren't so many YouTube videos and tutorials and books and everything that will show you how to process astro imaging using GIMP. But anyways, that's GIMP. So once you're happy with your final image, it's time to go back to Telescopius. So what you want to do is you grab your image, upload it to Telescopius, and you can add all the information, your equipment, your acquisition data, add some text, to say, okay, so hello everyone, this is the Statue of Liberty. Okay, great. And that's your final result. So if you're happy with that, it will create a TIFF image. There you go. In this case, it's 42.5 megabytes. It's not small. Could be larger than that. And many, many JPEGs, right? So if you want to go with a second alternative, so you want to process again, maybe a year later, I don't know, you want to process this image, you know what? The stars they look blue, I don't know, they're weird. So you process it again, you can upload a new version. You won't lose the last version you uploaded. You upload the new version and you say, okay, so this is the final one. You can get some comments and all that, right? So, and then you want to share. You pick here, you share, you go to Facebook and you share your image on Facebook, and that's Telescopius. So you use Telescopius at the very beginning. You're using Telescopius, to at the last step of this entire process. So can I get very decent images for free? Yes, you may. Okay, I really think so. So again, if you want to judge my images, okay, that's me. I mean, I'm not the best imager around. There are more talented people watching the channel right now, but I think you may go on this free route. So besides, I mean, you're going to be happy. They're decent images, right? So so you process, you can go to AstroBeam, you're going to get your likes. If you're talented, you will. And I would say, for the concluding remarks, another important thing is, and this is my experience, it's far more important to have a good mount, your astro imaging rig, good mount, your telescope, your camera, your polar alignment, and get very good, results from the backyard, right? So you have your good images, good darks, good calibration frames, and there you go. I mean, your image is going to look amazing, regardless if you're using, paid software or you're going on this free route. So if you want to pay for something, I would say, okay, so it has this extra functionality that this free alternative don't offer. So in that case, take marginal steps. Okay, so I need that extra functionality. It's not available for free. Okay, so I'll pay for whatever software it is. But maybe I would discourage you from, just throwing a whole bunch of money and paying for many applications that you probably won't ever use. I don't think that's the way to go. So I'd go free, and then once you see I want to add this and that, it's not available for free. So there you go. That's when you probably going to need PixInsight or other software, and you add it to your library, but don't spend money, without a good reason. So that's pretty much it. Thank you. I don't know if there are some questions.
Terry, I didn't see any
good.
questions. Do
No,
you have any questions?
just a comment from Jeff saying that he did have good experience using Discord services to get some assistance. I've got a few other bits of software if you're interested. These are for image processing. There's one called Iris. It's very mathematical. So if you're with PixInsight, it's quite old. It was available on Unix first of all, and there's another one called Images Plus, which used to be paid software, but now it is free with version 6.5, and that's where I had originally started using that. And it was very similar to PixInsight in many ways, where you work through the workflow. But they are both free, and they're quite capable to do a lot of fine work. So that's Images Plus and Iris.
Iris, that's Christian Buell, I believe, the author, and it's pretty old. I remember using that maybe back in 2005, something like that. And yeah,
it is quite old. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's coding. You're coding, so you have full control of what you're doing, which is a good thing in the end, right?
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? I don't see any other questions online. Is anything from our crew here? I guess it's only myself, Terry, and Tim. And Patrick.
It was it was interesting. As you were going through all of the different software and kind of having all these free options laid out, it really struck me just how many significant and common programs I think that a lot of us use are now free, and they're not just. I mean, they're free for top-notch software. You've got PhD, Nina. You mentioned that you're not or Stellarium doesn't work necessarily to your taste as much. I love Stellarium myself, but Carte de Ciel is also. I mean, that's a top-notch program as well. Another one that didn't get mentioned, but ASTAP in the plate solving is amazing. And the way it's integrating in with Nina and some of the new tools. So yeah, I think it's really, it's really impressive. And like I said, to see it all sort of laid out all together, you realize that there is quite a bit in the free space that people can use without having to spend money. And since we're all spending so much money on the rest of our equipment, right? If you can save anything you can save, I think is really helpful. So.
That's right. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned ASTAP, because you really want to plate solve, and ASTAP works great with Nina. And by the way, you can also use ASTAP for pre-processing, which means you can, get your framings and your dogs and all that, and pre-process using ASTAP. Yep, and it's absolutely free.
Okay, that was a very interesting presentation. Now, you mentioned a couple of programs that I think in the beginning that we all kind of used, and maybe we've graduated to pay programs for good reasons, maybe not so good reasons, or just because we thought it was better. But I think, as you pointed out, we can put together a package of basically free software and come up with images that are certainly pleasing to ourselves and worth posting and pleasing to others as well. If there are no more comments, I think we're kind of done for this evening. And Guy, thank you so much for coming on. And if in the future you'd like to give another presentation, you know where we are. We're always online. Just send us a note, come up with a topic, and you would certainly be welcome. And with that said, hope to see everyone next week for another program. Tim, what's on next week? Do you remember?
Yeah, we have Bob ZEQ from Cloudy Nights.
From Cloudy Nights. Probably a name that if you're on Cloudy Nights, you will recognize. We don't know his real name, but we know his handle. So I guess we're all set. Dee, if you want to hang on after the regular public meeting, you certainly can. We keep the room open for a while.
Absolutely. Thanks.
So Tim, take us out. Everyone, good night. We'll hopefully see you all next week.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.